All right, so it comes as no surprise, Denver is an awesome place to live. But there are definitely a lot of things that locals like myself just aren't talking about that much. And if you're considering moving here, you definitely want to know about this stuff. So in this video, I'm going to share with you guys 5 very unique, specific things about Denver from a Colorado native that you've got to learn about. So I'm going to talk through all of this in the video today, so stay tuned. All right, so as I said, today's gonna be all about these 5 really unique things about living in Denver that you might not know about. Really important that you find out exactly what you're getting yourself into before moving out here to the Mile High City. So excited to share this one with you today. But as you guys already know, hopefully, my name is Adam Lang. I'm a licensed realtor here in Denver, 40+ year Colorado native. All that info down below. Feel free to reach out. I would love to connect with you guys. Even if you're not seriously considering moving right now, I can definitely still hopefully find some ways to provide value to you, whether it be some guides on the local areas around town or maybe a buyer's handbook all about what you need to really succeed in the real estate market out here in Denver in 2025. But let's go ahead and get started. Again, talking about 5 really cool, unique things that I'm excited to share with you. And we'll start off with number 1, which is that mountain views, which, let's talk honestly here. Everybody wants to have a home with mountain views. But you might not realize just how much of a premium they really do demand when it comes to home prices and mountain views. So this can vary significantly depending on what part of town you're in. But on average, a lot of homes that have really significant mountain views can demand a 15 to even 20% premium on the price of the home. And also, what's I think just as important to understand is that Denver has a lot of different views of the mountains depending on what part of town you're in. I've done another video recently actually where I shared my 3 favorite neighborhoods in all of Denver that I think have the best mountain views. So I'll go ahead and link that video up here. Make sure you guys check that one out if you want some specific areas. But today I just want to talk more about just how there is definitely a premium associated with mountain views. And sometimes people aren't really expecting that before they start getting out with boots on the ground and looking at homes and kind of seeing this firsthand. And to kind of take this a step further, there is such a big misconception with, you're looking at homes on Zillow, for example, and you see, first headline of the property description, mountain views. Then you get in the home and maybe you're touring it with your agent like myself, get upstairs and it's in maybe the master bedroom, the primary bedroom, or maybe it's one of the other rooms upstairs, and out of one of the windows, you can kind of see a mountain in the distance, and they're claiming that's a dramatic mountain view. So just making a point that there can be a significant difference of opinion on what a true mountain view is. So find out for yourself when you're getting out there and looking at homes. But as far as parts of Denver that I think are some of the best for mountain views, again, I go in this in more depth and detail in that other video, but Golden, Littleton, anywhere on the western side of town, you're gonna have views that are a lot closer to the mountains, different perspective. But also you can be in other areas like further south in Highlands Ranch, where you're a little bit further away, but you have these much more expansive views of the mountains. So anyways, just wanted to finish out this point by just reminding you that what I'm trying to get at is there are significant premiums when you start getting out and looking at real estate that do truly have significant mountain views. Oh, you know what? Before we move on, I actually just thought of one more local insider tip that I want to share with you. When you are looking for homes and views are important to you, consider newer built communities. The reasoning for this is a lot of times some of these more historic and a lot more older, more mature neighborhoods have also more mature landscaping and trees. So some of the areas that might, be closer to the mountains or you might think have better views, a lot of times can be obstructed just by the growth of all of the foliage and trees in those neighborhoods. So just something else to consider, but when you are going out into more new build communities, those right now definitely do have more significant views in some cases. All right, now let's get on to the rest of the video. Okay, so the second thing I want to share with you guys, again, from a local and Colorado native, is just the expense and the unexpected costs associated with the hobbies and just the lifestyle that hopefully you're moving out here for. You come out to Denver with all these expectations of every weekend, I'm gonna be going up to the mountains and skiing in the wintertime. Oh, and I'm gonna be going camping in the summer and get out on the lakes and go paddleboarding and doing all these great activities. And you know what? I don't blame you. That's why I still choose to live here in Colorado. But a lot of people move out here they're already on a little bit tight of a budget, especially if they're buying a home, and they don't realize just how expensive the barrier of entry is for some of these sports. And Colorado is probably most famous for skiing, so I'll use this as my example today. But when you start adding up all of the miscellaneous costs when it comes to skiing, especially maybe for a family, let's just use an example of a family of 4, nobody really is that experienced yet. Maybe the husband or wife, or maybe some of the adults in the family have a little bit more experience. Maybe they've skied in the past. But overall, everybody that's moving out here is pretty much a beginner or just kind of getting started for the first time. So in an example like this, let's just add up a few of these costs. First off, you're gonna all have to get passes, either whether it be a day pass or a season pass. A few mountains this past year actually went above $300 just for one day on the mountain. Aspen and Vail, I know for sure, went over this $300 barrier. But also I know a lot of other mountains are still in that $250 to $300 range, which still is just insane when you think about taking your family of 4 skiing for the day. So we're talking first lift tickets. Let's just go $250 a person for 4 people. We're already at $1,000 for the day. We've got equipment, whether you're renting or buying. Significant expense here. If you're renting, this is going to be another $60 to $80 a day. It could be even higher if you're renting premium equipment. You don't have all the gear as far as jacket, pants, helmet, gloves, goggles, underwear, the base layers. All of this stuff just adds up and adds up. And if you got kiddos, guess what? All that expensive stuff you're buying for them, they're gonna grow out of it in a year or 2. So you're gonna have to buy all that stuff again and probably another time before they finally get to the age where they're buying it for themselves or, whatever. So again, we got lift tickets, we got equipment, we got gear, and then you gotta get up there. Now I'm gonna talk about this a little bit more in another point here in a second, but on top of all those expenses, you also just have the convenience of whether you're staying up in the mountains for the weekend, or at least for a couple days to avoid that back and forth commute from Denver, or if you are going up just for the day from Denver, you need to first make sure you have a reliable car, definitely something that's all-wheel drive and has good tires on it. And on top of the vehicle, you're also gonna have to spend money on gas. Gas is pretty expensive today. We're at $3.50 a gallon, so there and back, you're looking at probably $40-ish of gas. So you add all this up for a family of 4 just to go up for a weekend, you could be looking at significant expenses. We're talking maybe $2,000 to $3,000, and that, could take you on a vacation somewhere for a week. So it is just crazy how expensive some of these sports have gotten in the last few years. So just keep that in mind. I don't want that to be a deterrent. I think what's more important is just to realize that when you get out here, I think what's best to do, in my opinion, is to kind of pick one activity per season and really just go all in on that. So let's just say it's skiing. For the next few years, that's what you guys are all gonna get into, so that's where you're putting your money. You're not kind of dabbling in that, but then you also really want to get into mountain biking and maybe get all the camping gear and start really getting into backpacking. If you can really limit just what you're into and at least give it a solid year or 2 or more to really give it its full level of kind of commitment and hopefully improve a lot and really start to enjoy yourself because you're getting better at it, I think that's the way to go. I'm saying this from a place of I've kind of gone both ways on this. I've kind of tried out little things and spent a lot of money and then realized it's just not for me, and that was kind of a sunk cost. One of those for me was road biking, so cycling. But anyways, just making that point, guys, that I think you really need to just be aware that there are going to be a lot of costs associated with any of the hobbies that hopefully are, again, why you're coming out to Colorado in the first place. You know what? Before we move on, just like that last point, I'm going to share with you guys another local insider tip. So when it comes to skiing, the best thing you can do if you want to save money, especially if you got younger kiddos that are, getting a lot bigger every year and you're going to have to consistently upgrade their equipment and their gear, in the late spring, typically a lot of not only the ski areas, but also a lot of places in Denver. One of my favorites over the years was always Christie Sports will put out their big spring sales where they're just trying to liquidate any remaining gear that they have from that previous season. So if you're able to maybe move out here at a time of year where you're just missing the ski season, or maybe you're just getting out here and you've got rental gear for the first year, utilize this opportunity to buy gear at a significant discount. Again, a lot of this is late spring when the season's kind of winding down, but also you'll be able to find some of these in the early fall as well. If you guys are in Denver, in the Wheat Ridge area, my favorite ski shop I used to always go to as a kid, also great for rentals, which you can actually rent the skis for the entire season, is a place called Larson's Ski and Sport. It's in Wheat Ridge, just off of Kipling and I-70. It's a great family-owned business to check out. They've got some of these really cool ski swaps where you can even go there yourself with your equipment and sell it almost like a garage sale. So just some really good opportunities out there to find deals if you are looking, especially in the off season of the ski time of year. All right, so now jumping into number 3. This one is close to my heart because I have a dog myself. It's gonna be just talking about that dog-friendly culture and that reputation that Colorado and Denver has for being a very dog-friendly state. And while that is definitely true, and it's a great place to have a pet, there are definitely, though, a few things I want to share with you again as a Colorado and Denver native. The first one is that a lot of the parks in the Denver area are quite crowded. You know, some of the most popular that you may have heard of, Washington Park, Sloan Lake, places like this, you know, they're gonna have a significant amount of traffic of people with their dogs walking in any time of year, but especially in the kind of late spring through the early fall when it's beautiful weather here. When I first moved back to Denver in 2019, I was living up in the mountains for about 15 years, up in the Aspen area. Came back to Denver, and then right then is when I got my first dog. You know, my family always had pets, but it was my first dog for myself, Charlie. And I didn't really think about this until I started taking him on walks, but not only are a lot of these places quite crowded, if you have a dog that maybe is, you know, pretty curious and likes to bark or just kind of come up to other dogs, you're gonna have your work cut out for you. You're gonna be always dealing with that. Luckily, my dog Charlie doesn't do too much of that, but I was kind of expecting that when I'd have my dog, I'd be able to, you know, take him to certain places where I could just take him off leash and just kind of let him run in front of me and not have to be kind of tied down with the leash the whole time. You know, when I lived up in the mountains, a lot of my friends up there, a lot of trails there, you can do this. You know, you can just kind of be out way away from pretty much anybody else and not have to worry about, you know, coming up on people on the trail and scaring them with your dog off leash. You know, in Denver, it's just so almost impossible at this point to really do this other than going to dog parks. But these dog parks are also getting super busy. You know, in fact, Chatfield as well as Cherry Creek State Dog Park. Cherry Creek's actually one of my favorites. I've done a couple other videos all about this, but these can actually reach max capacity on busy weekends. So you can actually, you know, put your dog in the car, make the effort to get out to Cherry Creek to take your dog to this, you know, really nice off-leash dog park, and you can't even get in because it's at max capacity. So just, you know, there are a lot of people with dogs out here in Denver, and if your expectation is that, you know, that Denver's this amazing, you know, place in the mountains or near the mountains, and you know, everybody's kind of a little bit more free-spirited and you can have your dog off leash, you got another thing coming. You know, it's pretty rare to find this anywhere in Denver other than these dog parks. And just personally speaking here, I just don't really like taking my dog to those. I kind of worry about just not disease, but just, you know, just picking up stuff that's just in the dog park, and I prefer to just get out and find places on my own with him. So if you guys are kind of like me, just realize that you might have to get a little bit to the outskirts of town to find these types of places. And then one last thing I'll share about owning a dog in Denver. You know, again, as a first-time dog owner just a few years ago, I didn't really realize the additional expense that went on with owning a dog, you know, when it came to veterinarian bills and just the maintenance of having a dog. You know, these routine visits I'm taking Charlie on every 6 months are $150 to $200 per visit. You know, there's also even insurance where you can get now for your dogs, but that's averaging $50 to $75 a month in most cases. So these are just additional expenses that you might not be thinking of if you are, you know, really trying to be very cautious of your spending and what your budget might be coming out here. Oh, you know what? I'm just gonna keep this trend going with the local tip on every one of these points. So for this one, I also wanna share with you one of my favorite spots to take Charlie, which is actually in the Golden area, and it's called New Terrain Brewery. So what's super cool in Denver is a lot of these bars and restaurants are now embracing this huge dog culture that we have, and they're actually having a lot of areas where you can not only just hang out kind of on the outskirts of a bar or restaurant with your pet, but at New Terrain, I mean, literally almost all the tables, you can just have your dog underneath the table with you with a dog bowl that they'll provide, and incredibly dog friendly, even to that next level to maybe what you're used to back home. So Denver definitely does have a lot of these really cool local spots to check out. Again, my favorite would be New Terrain, which is in the Golden area. All right, so let's keep this going. So number 4 is gonna also be about the extracurricular activities in Denver. And I was talking earlier about skiing. This one's also about skiing, and this one is actually though about, when I first, started talking to other people, maybe like yourselves, that were considering relocating out here to Denver, I realized after talking to a lot of my different past clients and also just friends that were moving here to Denver, that a lot of people have a misconception of how far away ski areas are to Denver. And, there are some ski areas that are quite close, but I think a lot of people need to kind of have a reality check on how long it takes to get up to the mountains to go skiing on a given weekend, for example. So first off, that word I just said, weekend, that gives me a little bit of cringe and PTSD just thinking about weekend warrior, meaning going up to ski on the weekends, because I got spoiled. As I said, I lived up in Aspen for about 15 years and had a few seasons where I got over 100 days a year, and lived there for a few years where I could even walk to the ski lift from where I lived. And I got spoiled. And I know I'm not expecting a pity party from anybody. It was some of the best years of my life, but I just got to remind you guys that get a little bit more of a deep understanding of where Denver's located when it comes to the distance, but also the time it gets to get to these places on a normal, typical, like midweek day versus the weekends. A lot of these resorts, they look close on the map, but like for example, Breckenridge or Vail, let's use Vail for this example. What could only take about a 90-minute drive on a Tuesday midweek commute with no bad weather. On a Saturday morning, maybe we had a big storm on Thursday and Friday, and it's even more excitement about going up to ski Powder. That same drive on a Saturday morning at, let's just say 6 or 7 a.m., it could literally take you 3 hours, not only just to get there, then you get to Vail and you realize that every single main parking lot is, for one, totally full already. Number two, it's charging you $45 to park your car there for the day. And once you park finally and pay most likely to park, then you got solid probably 25 or 30 minutes walking in your ski boots just to get to the lift, to then wait in a 30-minute lift line just to get up onto the mountain. So I have a lot of friends that, have moved out here that are super excited about skiing, and it only takes a couple of days like that to really kind of leave this bad taste in your mouth. So I don't want to scare you guys away from skiing. Skiing is one of my favorite activities to do in Colorado, but you can have such a better experience if you just have a little bit of strategy around when you go, and ideally finding a few other people that also are really into skiing and similar skill level as you, and then just chip in on staying up there for a weekend. A really good tip is to either take Friday or ideally take Monday off and make it a 3-day weekend. That way you're only having to do that commute up or down one of those during one of the busier times. And then that other time that you're getting up there is, on a weekday, hopefully, where you're not dealing with any traffic at all. I'll just share one story on this before we move on. When I lived up in Aspen, I had one of my best friends up there. His name was Jeff, and he grew up there. When we were in college, this is actually where I met Jeff. Every, January, we would commute or drive with a group of friends from when we were going to school in college in Boulder. We would go up to Aspen in January for the X Games. X Games is this awesome, I don't know how many years now it's been in Aspen, but I think maybe almost 2 decades now. But it is just this awesome free event where there's all the best extreme sports going on for the winter. And we would go up there every year and just enjoy it. We'd ski. We'd also just go to some of the actual events like the half pipe, and they'd even have snowmobiling, all kinds of cool stuff. We had an experience though where one year, there's a big snowstorm. X Games brings a ton of traffic from Denver, especially since a lot of these events are free. So it was a very busy weekend already to be on I-70, our highway that we take to get east and west to and from the mountains. We actually had a packed car in my friend Jeff's Subaru, a little WRX, so it's like a small little hatchback, fits 5 people. Of course, we had 5 of us, all college guys, packed full of our ski gear and all of our bags in the back. If you guys have been skiing, you guys obviously know there's a lot of gear associated with that, which takes up a lot of room. We were packed to the gills in this Subaru, and it took us almost 11 hours. It's not a typo, 11 hours to get from Aspen back to Boulder. We got to one part, the road was closed. We had to wait for like 2 hours. Finally, it got reopened. It's all because of the bad weather and just the high volume of cars on the road for this. We got a little bit further, same thing. A lot of people ended up just getting hotels for the night, but unfortunately, we had just missed the exit to be able to kind of make that decision and do that. So now we were basically just stuck on Vail Pass, just waiting to get all the way through these different challenging sections of I-70 until we finally made it back to Boulder, and it literally was like 11 hours. That was, the worst experience I've ever had on a highway with ski traffic, but hopefully you will never experience anything like that. But again, just making the point that it's not as close as you think, but it is definitely worth trying because skiing is an incredible thing to do anywhere in the world. But if you guys haven't really gotten into that yet, I just hope you guys at least give it a shot. And as always, one local tip. So there are definitely, though, a few ski areas that are a little bit closer to Denver, and these are the ones that I always love to hit, especially in the spring months. And I say spring because usually in the spring, a little bit more predictable weather, and a lot of the times the traffic won't be as bad because the road conditions will be a lot better. It'll be nice, clear roads, sunshine, and you won't have to deal with, some of these unexpected issues with the, a foot of snow on the highway and people, peeling out and not being able to keep on the road, all that fun stuff. But so the two areas that I think are some of the best if you are, looking just for quicker day trips is first off, Eldora, which is really close to Boulder. So if you guys live on that northwestern side of Denver, I have friends that live in Boulder and they take their kids up skiing all the time to Eldora, and a lot of times they'll go up and they'll be back, before lunchtime. So Eldora is a great option if you're on that northwestern side of town. If you're not, maybe you're like myself, I live down in the southwestern side of Denver in Littleton. Where I like to go is Loveland. So Loveland is also one of the very first mountains when you're starting to go up I-70, and it's a little bit more of a kind of a ski bum type community. And what I mean by that is some of the lifts are a little bit older. They're not quite as much of a resort type feel. In fact, there's not even a single hotel or accommodations in the Loveland ski area. It's right before you go into Eisenhower Tunnel. So what's nice about Loveland also is since you're before the tunnel, a lot of that traffic and just that congestion happens right after that. So you're always, for the most part, confident that you're gonna have the minimal amount of any issues with traffic. But what I love though about Loveland is actually went this past week on a Monday with a couple friends from high school, and we literally left my house at 8:30 and we were up getting first chair by 9:35. So it usually takes about 55 minutes if there's no construction just to get all the way to Loveland, door to door, and that's pretty awesome. So again, I went up there, skied for half a day, got a great workout in, had some fun with some friends I hadn't seen in a long time, and was still back at my desk in my office by like 1 o'clock in the afternoon with half a day left to still be somewhat productive. So little locals tip, Loveland and Eldora, two great mountains to check out. All right, and then the last point that I want to share with you guys, this is something that I'm dealing with right now, is that there are a lot of water and drought restrictions when it comes to Denver that a lot of people don't realize. And I'll kind of take that a step further and just explain to you for a minute that if you have a yard and you like to keep your grass, your traditional yard nice and pristine, you don't have anything like xeriscaping, which is becoming very popular, meaning using different materials instead of grass to create landscaping that doesn't require as much water. Talk more about that in a second, but if you have a more traditional lawn like I do at my house and you want it to be as green as possible, you got to really be cautious about just how much water you're using. Denver does have some restrictions they put into place in certain times of the year to avoid overuse of water and any drought concerns. But if you do end up using more than kind of what you're supposed to, a lot of the utility companies will actually bump up the rate that they're charging you at per gallon, like significantly. I was watering this dead dry spot in my backyard last summer, hitting it every day for like 2 weeks. Obviously, watering a little bit more than I was supposed to, but just trying to repair this section of yard. When I got my water bill, it was like $200 compared to like $40, which it normally was. So it's like 5 times more. I didn't use 5 times as much water, but it was because I went up into the secondary tier of pricing if you go over a certain amount of usage in a given like 30-day period of time. So just be aware of that. But then also talking a little bit more about this xeriscaping. This is really, really popular right now, and you're gonna find this in almost all new construction communities. And it's just a way to, again, minimize the amount of actual water needed because you don't have as much grass. And I think, in my opinion, there's classy ways to see xeriscaping and some that just look a little bit just kind of boring and just not that impressive. The ones that I think look really nice, they're utilizing lots of different types of rock, stone, mulch. They're not only relying on like one type of material. Some of these really kind of like cheap new build communities, some that are really, on a budget, they're just not trying to spend any money they don't have to. You'll just see like big sections of just nothing but 3/4 inch stone, just like rock field basically. And I just think that just, it doesn't look that good. And if you have any pets or little kiddos, they have nowhere to enjoy playing. So what I'd recommend doing is just making sure you're finding a community that has a little bit more tastefully done xeriscaping, or you have a nice healthy balance where in your backyard, you still have traditional sod, so nice grass, green type environment. And then maybe only in the front yard, you have a minimal amount of that, and it's more of this xeriscaping. So something just to keep in mind, and maybe now that I'm talking about it, you're gonna start to notice this a little bit more as you drive around and look at potential communities that might fit your family best when looking at Colorado and Denver as a place to live. All right, so I can't finish this last point without sharing another local tip. So I'm going to share another just quick little, thing that I did at my last house I was really happy with after completing it. My dad was a big part of this. He helped me a lot on this project, but I had a house in Sloan Lake, and it had, it wasn't a grassy backyard. Basically, the homeowner before me had put in this kind of garden that just did not fit what I was looking for. So as we kind of revamped that, and we're getting ready to create our own backyard, I was looking at just doing a traditional grassy, typical sod installation of grass in my backyard. But what we decided to do instead was actually install artificial grass or turf. And you're seeing this a ton now in a lot of different homes that I take my clients to check out when we're looking at homes. And I think this is something that has really improved over the last 5 years in the quality of how well it looks, the installation, getting it professionally done. And it becomes something that, honestly, sometimes you don't even realize it's artificial grass. There's definitely a right and a wrong way to do this. And my dad and I, we did do it ourselves. And my dad is an expert at a lot of that kind of stuff. He's really good with just home projects. So I think ours did come out pretty well. But I've also seen some installations at other homes that I've toured that look really bad. So this is an example of something that can be a huge benefit. And a lot of other people might also see this if you put this in your house and you go to try and sell it in the future. A lot of people will see a lot of value in having this artificial grass, but only if it's done professionally and really just tastefully done where it looks good and you didn't cut any corners. So just something to keep in mind, that artificial grass or turf is another great option if you are somebody that still wants to have some form of usable space for kids or for your pets, but maybe you don't want to go the route of xeriscaping. So think about that next time you guys are considering a change in your backyard setup. All right, so there we have it, guys. Hope these were all really helpful for you. I had fun making this one today for you because just sharing some personal things that I've learned over the years as far as things that maybe people don't realize or think about when they move out here. So if you guys just got one piece of value from this, I'll consider it a win on my end. But I just want you guys to realize that despite some of these things that I've talked about today, Denver is an awesome, awesome place to consider moving to. And I hope you guys at least give it the chance it deserves to see if it might be a good fit for you and whoever else you might be moving out here with. I haven't really talked about this yet today, but I also have an awesome relocation guide. It's this locals guide to Denver I put together. It's over 20 of my favorite neighborhoods all around town, from north to south, east to west, everywhere in Denver. I include spots in all of the different 4 areas of Denver that I think are some of the best. It's completely free. Just click the link down below, or you guys can visit my website, adamsillsdenver.com, and I've got a free copy of it for you there waiting. So make sure you guys grab one. It's definitely helpful. And before you guys leave, also hit that like and that subscribe button. Show me a little love. I'd love to get out to more and more people and just hopefully share why I love living here, and hopefully find a few more people, hopefully maybe like yourself, that want to consider moving here too. And if you do, let's connect on a Zoom call and learn a little bit more about each other, and hopefully I can help. I look forward to seeing you guys next week on a brand new episode of Living in Denver. I'll see you then.